Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Boyan and I'm thrilled to have you for today's webinar on solving hiring process optimization for business success. Recruitment is more than just filling positions. It's about finding the foundation of your organization's growth, culture, and long-term success. Today, we're going to dive deep into strategies and solutions to optimizing recruitment process and unlock untapped potential within your teams. Just a quick note on the format. Your microphones and cameras will remain off to ensure a smooth experience for everyone. And we set aside the final 20 minutes for a live Q&A session. As we go along, please feel free to drop your questions inside the Q&A section. If you have issues finding it or have any technical challenges, please let us know. My lovely colleague Veronica will be monitoring the Q&A and the chat to ensure everyone's questions are addressed during the session. Now, I am very excited to introduce our lovely guest, Boyan Stoyanov. He has an inspiring story and a wealth of experience to share, but rather than summarizing it, I'm going to invite him to tell us about himself and how his journey began. Boyan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bena. First, I'd like to say that I appreciate the invite for this webinar, and I'm sure that it will be a great discussion. We'll do our best to share materials and recordings after that with everybody who joined us or couldn't join us. Hello, everyone. My name is Boyan. I have about 20 years of experience, half of which was spent in Asia, specifically Southeast Asia, more specifically Malaysia, but I was doing business in the entire region. So what I'm going to share with you is based on my personal experience in both continents, Europe and Asia. Almost 10 years ago, I started focusing on solving the problem of building a winning team, or in other words, recruitment, if you may. What we're going to share with you today are things that are based on practice, actual observations, based on what I do for different types of companies, which is mostly helping them analyze, plan, and optimize their recruitment capabilities, which includes the processes, the skills within the team, and like whatever else is necessary. So I hope that intro is enough. Albena?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Boyan. For sure. Today, we're going to talk about an area of the HR process. And just before we started actually the webinar, we were discussing that for many people, HR equals recruiting. But is this the reality?
Well, I mean, this is one of the challenges in what we do, right? When we are building teams is to have the same understanding about given terminology, right? So for some people, recruitment might mean just candidate sourcing. For me, it means a lot more. What I think is important when we are defining different words is what actually stays behind that, the meaning of these words, right? Recruitment is, yes, it's a subsection of the total HR, right? As a human resource function of the company. One of the things that I find important to clarify is that HR is not one profession, right? HR is an umbrella of professions, and just like marketing or product development or any other function of a business, there's like a number of professions that are part under the overall HR, and recruitment is, if not the most important, at least equally important as much as anything else.
Awesome.
Yeah, I hope we clarify that.
Thank you for clarifying. Yes, I think this is also very important and a key point. Okay, let us continue with the concept that solving challenges within an organization can lead to overall success. What does this mean to you, and how does it relate to recruitment and hiring process management?
Well, I look at it in a very simple way. Every problem that the business is trying to solve, right? An organization solves it through its team, right? Through its people. whether it's the product development or navigating the market challenges and conditions, whether it's a pandemic or a financial situation, macro situation, everything we solve through the team. So I believe that especially people who join this webinar today believe the same. The most important task for an entrepreneur or for a business owner or any leader is to build a winning team, right? Because if you achieve that, you have automatically solved every other problem, right? Because the team is what is going to solve everything else. And what really is painful to watch is when I see a company that the leadership team is straight up neglecting the importance of the process, the capabilities to find, hire, and keep the right people in the team, right? And it's a process. It's not a dream. I observe certain level of, we could even call it a fear, from like doing recruitment properly or building a winning team in a systematic way, right? Like stepping on a process, right? For many people, that's probably some unexplained and mystery way that like it just happens on its own somehow, right? And you can see even based on the things that we see online, let's say LinkedIn or job portals. So when you see the average company, what they do when they're trying to build and improve their teams, in my opinion, that they're just scratching the surface, right? They're doing the bare minimum. And from my conversations with different founders and business owners, my deduction is that over time, because it's so complex and challenging topic, right? Such a difficult thing to do. Over time, we, referring to us, the business leaders, the founders, or department heads, or whatever, we condition ourselves to something that we can tolerate, right? It's like we tolerate something we're not happy with, but we kind of get used to it, and we focus our attention on other topics, which is a massive mistake, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree that the recruitment is a very complex process, and you mentioned a few mistakes that could happen. From your perspective, can you say what are the most common recruitment mistakes? Is it what you mentioned, scratching the surface, and also how can organizations address them?
There are so many mistakes, but I don't know how to organize them based on priority or importance, but maybe I can try to put them in a chronological order, right? Because you start from somewhere, right? And the very beginning of everything that is related to building a team is acknowledging how important is what you do about it, right? So the first and probably biggest mistake, just because it's first in line, is neglecting it, right? The absolute biggest maybe or milestone mistake, or what can I call it, is neglecting the importance and neglecting what we do about the way that we build a team, right? I can give examples of neglect, right? Let's say a young company, startup, or even a scale up, and now here we need to define what is a startup, what is a scale up, but let's not do that right now. But a young company, fast growing company, let's say they already have a product market fit and they're going for a scale, right? They're going for growth, they get funding, whatever. And many of those companies, I speak to a lot of such companies, and many of them say, or at least the leadership team say, oh, recruitment is something that we will look into later. It's not, we're a small company, like it's not a topic for us right now. Or when we get the next funding, they keep pushing it like for later and later and later. And that's one way of neglecting it, right? Because if you think about it, it's much more important how you hire when you're 5 or 10 or even 20 people than it is when you're 200 or 1,000, because every hire when you're a small team has much larger impact on what the company does, on how it performs, on how the team works together, right? What are the dynamics in the team? Like if you're 10 people company, you hire 2 people, this is 20% of your business, right? So you cannot postpone it for later, like as if it's not important now, or just because there's no volume, right? Like the importance in recruitment massively is being associated to volume. So if I'm not hiring 100 people this year, that's not an important topic, which is one of the way to neglect the importance of it, right? Another example is trying to delegate it way too prematurely, right? Let's say you approach, I don't know, 40, 50 people, or maybe even less, 30, 40. You approach a moment when you start feeling, okay, we need an in-house HR. We need a dedicated person to do that, right? We cannot outsource it anymore. We cannot, right? We need to get somebody to deal with it, to commit to that function. And then as soon as somebody comes in the company, I have a personal friend like that. She joined a company of about 50, 60 people. It's a tech company, IT company. And she's a HR, but she's not specialized in recruitment. But just because she's an HR person, they just park under her recruitment and everything under the sun of HR, right? And here's what we spoke about earlier, right? So another way of neglecting it is to believe that you can just, as soon as the first HR person gets in your company, you can just dump that mountain on them, and you don't have to deal with it, or you can just, navigate it on a macro level. No, you still need to really be very hands-on. You need to participate. You need to, if you cannot be in every interview, I'm not saying that you have to interview every person, right? If you don't have the capacity for that, and we'll talk about capacity later, but if you cannot interview every candidate, at least be informed and be aware of how recruitment is being done by your team, by your, not just HR. How are your hiring managers interviewing people? What is the process? What's the strategy? Are the resources allocated? I mean, there's so many things that you as a leader, even if you're not participating in everything that is being done about it, you can still pay a lot of attention to it. And that's really like I will stop here. So yeah, otherwise we'll turn into a very long monologue.
No. Thank you very much. This is very important, and I think most of the audience can resonate with this. We have people joining us from different parts of the world, and you have experience in Europe and also in Asia. Do you see similarities, or everything is totally different in these two continents?
Actually,
in regards
I was
to
expecting
problems.
Yeah, I mean, even outside of the HR recruitment topics, when I was preparing to go to Asia, I was expecting everything to be reasoned in a very different way, and like people to be different somehow in terms of priorities, value systems, and all. And yes, like on the surface level, if you look at the way that things are manifested, the way that people do things, it's essentially different. But when you start asking the question why, the motives, the answer to the why is pretty much the same. So then over time, I realized that people are more similar than they are different in different parts of the world, right? It's just the style may differ, or like the manifestation of certain activity or profession or business relationship development. But the mistakes are pretty much similar, like the way that especially business owners and leaders neglect recruitment is pretty much similar. It doesn't matter if it's Asia or Europe or other part of the world. The mistakes are quite common, quite similar, I would say.
Great. Thank you. We at Businessmap are very customer focused, and of course our mission is to help clients not only solve their challenges, but also develop better awareness of the potential problems. Do you have any tips on that? Some some ways that organizations can gain a better awareness of such problems and how to avoid them. You mentioned also the leadership. Is the leadership involvement the most crucial part of the recruitment process?
I mean, everything in a company starts from the leadership, right? So they set the tone, they set the direction, they set the importance, right? It's like, this is why I'm so many times saying importance and neglect and leadership, because if a leadership team neglects a topic, everybody in the company will neglect that topic, right? It's just, we all in organization, like we've all been or we still are employees or part of teams, and there's like somebody above us who is making the big decisions, and we all try to, in order to be synchronized with the with how the organization is operating, we're all looking at the leadership team and trying to mimic the priority structure, even the attitude sometimes, or whatnot. So definitely everything starts with the leadership. I don't think that's something new to anyone in the room right now. And speaking about problems, right? How to identify, how to improve the awareness of problems. I think there's a big gap or big opportunity at the same time that companies can leverage, and that's the definition of problems, right? Something very common that I observe is organizations and people who are responsible for the hiring function or like building the winning team, they call the symptoms, they call it a problem. So for example, oh, we cannot find enough candidates, or we're not finding the right type of candidates, or the candidates are expecting too much money, or they're not like externalizing the fault, right? Externalizing, blaming the external elements for something that the organization is actually having a lot of control on, right? And that's not a problem. The fact that your, let's say, hiring pipeline is empty, or like there's not enough candidates in your pipeline, that's not the problem. That's the symptom, right? That means that something that should be driving enough quantity and quality in your pipeline is not working the way it should be, right? So then if we keep asking the question why, right? Why we don't have enough candidates, what we do about it, can we do something more, how are we doing it, can it be better, did we experiment, did we try everything, and in that part of the funnel where we are like in the sourcing, right, in the initial stage of the candidate experience, what I see is something very common and shared among most of the companies out there is the passiveness, right? What I mean passiveness is the relying too much on inbound recruitment. And what is inbound recruitment? That's basically posting a job ad or just announcing on your social media that you're looking for this and this type of people for these positions, and you're trying to give some reasons why people should apply and stuff like that. But that's passive, right? Like, I mean, you can only control the process that much by announcing something and waiting for people to come to you, right? What else can happen is something that is attributed as an agency tactic, which is like some people call it headhunting, or I call it generally active sourcing, right? It's like if people are not coming to you, you should go to the people, right? You should develop the ability to first reach and scan a large volume of potential candidates, to filter, to approach, engage, and then fill up. Like, so this is the proactive way. If they don't come to you, you should go to them. That's like, I think it's very obvious, but most companies just don't do it, or at least don't do it enough. And the way that most companies practice active sourcing is by just outsourcing, right? Just paying to an agency to do that for them. But that's something that they can do by themselves, right? And that's something that it's a missed opportunity. So yeah, I will stop here because otherwise I can drift a lot. But defining just to wrap it up, the definition of what is an actual problem, right? Defining that, like keep asking questions. Where does that symptom come from? Why is something happening? This is definitely the first the first step. Like if we don't understand crystal clear why something is happening, there's no way for us to fix it. And surprisingly, a lot of people who do recruitment do it based on assumptions or based on mimicking another company. And that's something that it's definitely a problem. Recruitment is not something that you can copy paste, right? I mean, you can take ideas and try to convert them or like how to say transform them through your lenses and like applying them in your ways. But simply copy pasting, like copy pasting job descriptions or copy pasting tactics, this is just destined to fail, because if you don't have a clear answer of the question, why are we doing something, then you cannot really execute it in an effective way. You cannot expect a reasonable outcome of it, right? And
absolutely.
So once you crystallize the problem, then you plan, right? You plan, okay, we know exactly what we are missing. Now we plan how we get it, how we fill the gap, and how we execute that thing better, or at least how we execute the experimentation, which will give us some data points that later on will navigate us to the right way of doing things, right? Data points, something massively lacking out there is ask your talent pool, ask the candidates that you have engaged for feedback. I mean, how many companies out there ask for feedback? I mean, they don't even provide feedback, let alone asking for feedback, right? And I don't want to sound too harsh, you know, I hope nobody takes offense here, but these are things that we should call them with the real names, right? The passiveness, the lack of data behind doing something or not, the lack of asking for feedback from the market. I mean, the talent market, like ask people. Your employer brand is not what you say about yourself, about your company. Employer brand is what people say about you when nobody is looking, right? Not in the public, but in the coffee shops, in the meeting rooms, in an office, in the lunch breaks, you know. These talents that you approach and you interact with or didn't, but they somehow have an impression of your company and the way that you build your teams, the way that you handle your employees and potential employees. This is the real employer branding. And then after we have a clear plan, then the process comes in place, right? Like when we define like what are the gaps and the problems, we have a plan how to fix it and how to execute it, and then the process, right? The process of what we do on each step of the funnel, right? It's like what we do when we speak about our brand, how we define our employer persona. This is a real thing that we need to do. We do it in marketing when we are selling our products or services or whatever we offer there, whatever we sell for money as a company, right? We do it really, we put a lot of effort into developing customer personas and everything, but very rarely I see a company talking about candidate personas and employer personas, right? No definitions. So if you don't have definitions, how are you going to know what you're looking and then turning it into action and turning it into result, right? And so the process is an endless topic. I know I'd rather leave the process thing to the Q&A session, because it's just again, one formula doesn't work for everybody. It's much more practical if somebody shares with us like a situation and we can kind of make it in a real life situation, this discussion. But last and not least is the skills. So we have we define the problem, we have the plan, we have some process or system in place, and like who is operating that, right? The human factor internally, like that person who is doing it inside the team. And it's not just one person. Here's another mistake, assuming that recruitment is all driven by the HR team, and it's a responsibility of HR. What about the hiring managers? If you ask any average candidate, if we ask ourselves, when I was a candidate going for interviews, what I cared the most about was the hiring manager. Like what is that person, right? How do they think, and can I relate to their business philosophy, to their working style, and all of that? But somehow, very rarely people talk about recruitment and responsibilities and attach hiring managers to that. And And even less often, they equip these hiring managers with the knowledge, with the tools, with the preparation that is necessary for them to conduct interviews, to sell the company's vision and mission, because recruitment is a sales process, right? You're selling the vision and the mission of that company. You're selling the future of that person in your company. So that's sales. Can the people involved in your company, in your recruitment function, in the function that is supposed to build a winning team, are all the people involved, all stakeholders, not just HR, are they equipped and are they ready, and can they sell well, right? And can they evaluate competencies, and do they even know what is the competency of framework of your company? Do you even have such asset? Because if you don't, then you're just shooting in the dark. And I'm really stopping here because I'm starting to feel like it's a monologue.
No, this is very interesting. Yes, I'm going to use the opportunity to encourage everyone who has a question, or, as Boyan advised, a real story, a real situation where you had such problems, or when you were selling your company, you wanted to recruit someone, but you had some similar challenges. What happened? What do you think it could be done differently? And let's ask the expert here. Great. Yes, I haven't thought about that. The similarities between recruitment and selling. It's a very interesting topic, and yes, there are a lot of similar processes, maybe, I assume, in both areas.
Yeah, the way that, if that's a kind of a question to me, sorry.
Yes.
The way that I discovered actually the similarities is because the first half of my career was focused on international B2B sales. I was building sales teams and performing international B2B sales with the teams that I built for different companies, but most of them were e-commerce companies or performance marketing agencies, consulting firms, social media platforms, and as such, basically in the digital economy. And so that's the first time when I realized that me as a team leader or a manager or head of department or whatever, it doesn't matter the title, but I was responsible for other people, and my results depended much more on my ability to build a team and not as much on my ability to close deals. Of course, closing deals was the essential skill, right? But I was doing it for years anyway. So if I was not good at it, I wasn't gonna keep doing it. But on top of the direct hard skill, when you are responsible for a team, how you build that team and how you lead it, and how you support it, because leadership is basically supporting other people. That's how I understand it. That's much more crucial over time, right? In the long-term goals that we're aiming to achieve. And I was really struggling with building my sales teams in different companies. It just, again and again, I was in a situation where, let's say, the HR team, they were doing their best, but their best was not sufficient for what I needed for my team, right? I kept getting candidates that I didn't even know why are they doing interview with me. Like in the first 3 minutes, I could see that candidate it's absolutely not built for sales, right? A lot, and there's nothing wrong. There's different people for different professions. Nobody is good at everything, and we shouldn't try to fit everybody in the same frame or the same profession, in the same skill, right? Like certain let's say the more commercial and social professions like sales, business development, marketing maybe, and stuff like that, they require certain type of character, of personality, right? And if you don't have that, it's really, really, really hard. I mean, I remember clearly interviewing and actually working with a guy because he was hired before the team was given to me, right? Like I arrived in Malaysia at 6 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 o'clock I was already in the office, hoping that actually I was going to start a few days later, but I started a few hours later. And they just welcomed me in the office with the words, okay, here's this team of 10 people that we have for you to lead. And I was like, well, I was hoping that I'm going to build my own team, but now I have to work with the people that somebody else hired. And soon after that, I realized that I'm asking myself, why are these people in a sales team, right? They didn't even want to do sales. It's not that there was something, it's not that they were lacking a skill or something. They didn't want to do sales. I was wondering, like, why did you hire people who don't want to do sales in a sales department? So anyway, I'm drifting a little bit. Yeah, like maybe you can navigate how we continue from here.
Yes, thank you very much. It is a very interesting point of view. Yes, and thank you for sharing this. Again, maybe this can resonate with some of the people in the audience. Okay, before we go to the Q&A, I think we can squeeze in one last topic, which is related to solutions. You've worked extensively on optimizing recruitment processes and managing capacity. What are some best practices organizations can follow in this area?
I think that the best practice is to really, one practice that everybody can share is knowing, oh, I'm sorry, there's some friend here flying around. So the best practice or the practice that everybody can try to apply, and it will help everybody, is trying to know exactly what is missing, right? It's like ongoing awareness of what works and what doesn't work, and where are the bottlenecks in your recruitment activities, or in everything that you do when you're trying to build a winning team, right? What I mean by that is that if you picture the whole process from, let's say, building your definitions, your personas, then your strategy, then you expand your talent reach, right? So you can see a bigger talent pool, then you start sourcing, and then engaging, and then interviewing, evaluating competencies with all kinds of assessment, interviews, and whatever techniques, right? Then negotiation, onboarding, and all that, right? It's like a whole funnel with many, many, many steps. And what happens is that when one of the most massive misconceptions that I see out there is the following: the belief that if we solve the candidate sourcing, basically if we fill up our pipeline, we've done our job. But that's actually far from the reality, because solving the first step pushes the bottleneck to the second step. So, for example, some people brag about, hey, I have like 300 candidates or whatever, hundreds of candidates for certain position, and they're super happy about it. And I wonder, why are you happy about having to screen such a large volume of profiles, right? That's a problem. That's a bottleneck, because if you have 300 applicants for one position, if you have 20 positions, this is like thousands of people that you have to screen now, because otherwise you don't know what you're missing, right? And that's mostly happening in the inbound approach, like what I was talking about earlier. So filling up the pipeline is not solving the whole recruitment. It's actually pushing the problem to the next step: screening and filtering, right? And once you do that, then you push the challenge to the next. Let's say if you screen fast enough and you improve your capacity in sourcing, then you improve your capacity of filtering. That means that you're pushing bigger and bigger volume to every following step. So if you currently are interviewing, let's say 10 people per week, but you solve the first two steps, and now you need to interview 50 people per week. Have you planned for that? Have you planned capacity? Are your hiring managers, do they have this available actual time, right? Because time is the biggest currency, we know. So every time you solve one step, you're just pushing the problem to the next step. So that's why you need to think holistically and how you solve all the funnel with the right techniques and solutions. I don't know, people really get excited about AI tools and all kinds of automation and stuff like that. But if you don't have the basics, if you don't have the fundamentals that you need, these are the definitions, the structure, the process, the knowledge, and the synchronized awareness. That means that if you ask a question, what is synchronized? If you ask a hiring manager, describe the ideal candidate for that position, the answer to be the same as the answer from the HR person, as the answer from the leadership team, and from the candidate itself, because what you're trying to do is to get what's in the hiring manager's head, right? They have the most complete understanding of what is the ideal person that they're looking for, right? What is the ideal candidate persona? So if you're losing that information across the process or across the stakeholders, you're missing the point. And when I was operating as an agency, because I built 2 agencies from scratch, I don't do that anymore, but I operated 2 separate agencies, one at a time, of course. And one of our biggest challenges as somebody who is trying from outside to help a company to find and hire the right people, or the whatever was defined as the right people or the best people for certain positions, our absolute biggest challenge was to really understand what we are looking for, right? And shortly after I started doing recruitment 8-9 years ago, I realized that job descriptions carry probably not more than 20% of the information that you really need in order to be able to plan and execute a recruitment function for that certain position or for a certain team or certain company, right? So what we were always trying to push for is to have a conversation with the hiring manager, to go to the source of that information, right? Because there was always a loss in translation when, let's say, the hiring manager, HR gives them, let's say, a template for a job description. Oh, fill that job description and we'll find the people. But nobody actually does a conversational extraction of that understanding, right? And without conversational extraction, you cannot get the full picture. And that's basically capacity management, right? And speaking of capacity, sorry, something else pops in my mind. Back to the topic that, like, expecting one HR in 100 people company to actually be able to do whatever HR performance management, strategies, team buildings, employer branding, recruitment, interviews, coordination, all of that, right? It's like, I mean, come on, be real. It's like when you do product development, do you ask one person to build the entire product? No, you hire 10, 20, 50 developers, you build them in squads and stuff. I'm not saying that you need to have 50 recruiters, but just be a little bit more realistic. It's not reasonable to think that one person can support in all HR 100 people company. That's just out of the any reason.
Absolutely. I saw that this provoked some questions inside the chat. And we also covered some fantastic insights. So I think now it's time to hear from you, from our audience. But before we dive into the Q&A, I wanted to mention that as a gift to all participants, thanks to the partnership with Boyan, we'll be offering an extended free trial at Businessmap. This will allow you to explore how you can visualize and optimize your processes, connect them to the organization's strategy, and create impactful improvements. You're going to receive a special link and via email. I think we also will share it in the chat. But now we can continue. My colleague Veronica has been monitoring the chat and gathering your questions. So
Hi, everyone.
I'm going to let you take it from here.
Awesome. Yes, I have shared a link in the chat, but more importantly, there are some cool questions. I'll start with the one from Derek, who says that we leap to action before we know what we are doing seems to be a widespread plague. I'd be curious to hear more about your knowledge discovery efforts went with your group. He's also asking about specifically Businessmap configurations, which I'm not sure we can cover in this webinar right now. However, if anyone is interested, we could definitely cover the recruitment process configurations that we've seen in the future. But for now, let's focus on the question for our speaker today.
Okay. Thank you, Veronica. Yeah, I have the question on my screen as well. Thank you, Derek, for the participation and for the question. I think that zooming into how we apply things into business map configuration, it could be another webinar because that's not something we can cover in a simple answer. And I think it's better to do some visualization of that process. It's really a very long activity to perform, and we don't have time for that. But I'll try to cover in essence whether it's regardless of the tool, right? Like your question is how you do how we do knowledge discovery, right? How we perform that. Well, that's simply based on. I'm assuming that you refer to like understanding the problems better, right? That's a team exercise, right? I mean, you can have an expert to lead you like me, or you don't have a person like that, doesn't matter. But what I think is essential is the participation from everybody who is relevant to the topic, right? Similar to, for example, if we're talking about competencies, right? If we define the competencies and the competency framework of a certain team or department and across the company, that's something that's a process that will point into what we are missing, right? It will point in the direction of gaps, will identify gaps. And that process is not a one-person exercise, right? That's not a one-man show kind of a thing. Somebody can lead that process, but it should involve all the experts and all leaders in the company, or at least those that are directly or indirectly involved in certain function or in certain objective, right? So let's say if we're talking about product development team, right? And we're asking ourselves, okay, are we missing something? The answer should not be based on, it's always done like this, so we need like 1 PM, one this, one that. Like, we shouldn't think of it as in a templated way just because in our previous company happened like that, or just because, I mean, we shouldn't structure our thoughts with job titles or position titles, right? We should translate the business objectives and key results, basically the OKRs of the business, like what the business, we should understand really well first, what is the business trying to achieve, and then break it down and translate it into how, what does that mean in terms of human capital? That means competencies, capacity, and all that. Like, what will get us over there, right? Whatever over there means, right? What will get us there? That will get us like the ability to perform certain actions or initiatives or execute certain tactics with certain level of capacity, which requires this and this and these competencies, right? At certain volume. And if we're able to look at our team and our organization as Lego blocks of competencies, right? We will be able to identify what's missing, right? Because, for example, if you need to build a feature in your platform, or let's say execute an initiative in your company, you ask yourself not how many people I need, but how many, what's the volume of tasks, and what competency is required to perform this volume of tasks over fixed time frame, let's say 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever, right? And when you answer that, you will realize that actually this can be done by 2, 3, 5 people or less, right? Because some people work faster, some people have more experience, have smarter ways to do things. So if you look at it as job titles, you're missing an opportunity to hire somebody who can do the job of 2 people. I'm speaking really in a very rough way, like it's not so black and white and it's not so simple, but really the ability to break down how we get from point A to point B into molecules. This is how you analyze and you find the gaps, right? And then that also helps you to map out how you configure this tool or that tool to achieve this. Like, for example, recruitment, right? It's like when you know the competencies, then you have a strategy, which channels you're going to use, how many activities you're going to do, how many people are going to work on that process of finding, engaging, and assessing certain volume of certain type of candidates, right? And this will answer all of your questions, right? So you always start with definition. And in building a winning team, the definition, the starting point is defining the competency framework, the competencies that need to be present in your company in order for you to reach your destination point. I'm hoping that I gave some answer to Derek's question. Derek, please feel free to share a follow-up question in the chat if that was not sufficient.
Excellent. So we do have another question, which I might be biased towards being part of the Businessmap team, but it asks, are there any specific metrics or signs that organizations need to monitor? So I think this is a question about what kind of data should we use to improve our hiring process that gives us, the opportunity to make informed decisions.
Okay, well, that's again, I'm not running away from responsibility to answer questions, but these are questions that don't have one formula, right? So the data that one company should measure is not the same like another company, because it's based again on what we are trying to achieve, right? If we try to achieve, if we are optimizing for speed, let's say certain company has raised big funding, and they find themselves in a situation that everything now is for yesterday, right? Like we need to hire like 50 or 100 people in 3 months, something that is insane, because until now we were hiring like 3 people per month or something like that, right? So in certain situations, you need to optimize for speed and try not to lose quality, right? But the number one priority for certain company might be speed, right? So there'll be different data points and metrics that you apply when you're optimizing for speed, and different when you're, let's say, a 5 people company, but you really want to be precise in hiring the 6th, the 7th, the 10th person, right? Then you optimize for assessment and basically evaluating competencies, right? Then you optimize, maybe you make it a little bit more detailed, the process, right? Because if you optimize for speed, you might actually want to shrink your process as much as possible without losing the assessment, point of it. But you might want to simplify your process if you optimize for speed. If you optimize for, let's say, retention and performance and let's say cultural fitness, you might want to add some steps or add some ways that you're evaluating competencies. So metrics really depend on the objective and what you're trying to achieve and how many people you are, right? How many people are behind that process? How many people are participating at each stage of your function that is building the team, right? Do you have one person that has to do everything in recruitment, and on top of that, team buildings and payroll and whatnot, signing contracts and onboarding people and employer branding and all that, right? Then you cannot choose that much, because that person has like only that much capacity to do all of these things. So you really need to ask yourself, like, what we have, what we can leverage, and what is reasonable for us to try to perform as an action, and what's our priority? Do you want to be faster? Do you want to be more accurate? All these things. Like if your investor tells you need to be that many people in the next 3 months, well, I mean, I think that's the number one priority, right? Although I'm not a big fan of speed over quality, because then you deal with other types of problems. There's somebody was saying that 80% of the time, 20% of the time we hire people, and 80% of the time we deal with the hiring mistakes. So I wouldn't advise for speed, but sometimes that's just what the priority is. I hope that I gave some clarity to that.
Thank you. There's also a question that asks, what should we look for if it comes to selecting a software to support the hiring process?
Okay, that's a really a good question. What should you look for is something that answers. You need to first know what you need, right? I regularly explore different tools. I do probably 2-3 product demos per week for me to keep myself aware of like what are the solutions out there, right? Because it's not only tools that are labeled as HR tool that can help you perform an HR activity. Just like your tool, right? Your product, Businessmap, it can absolutely be applied for solving HR topics and recruitment topics, even though if a random person looks at it, it may not be labeled as the HR, like it's not like applicant tracking system or whatever, but it's actually can just as well do the same function if you know how to set it up and if you know what you need for it. So my answer to the way that we choose tools is first step is to write down and crystallize the criteria that we have, right? What do we need? Do we need something that costs 20 euro per month per seat, or can we afford something that costs 2,000 euro per month? Because the range is that much, right? It's like you can spend thousands or you can spend dozens of dollars, right, for tools. And how many people are going to use it, right? There are tools that are designed for large organizations, right? There are tools that are designed to be used by 100 people together in one function or in one process, right? And there are tools that are simplified. If you're like 20 people company and usually a founder or co-founder is like a one-man recruitment show, right? Then you'd rather go for something more simplified, something that doesn't overload you with hours and hours that you need to spend in order for you to figure out how to use that tool, right? So you really need to define your criteria and then look for tools that match that criteria. I mean, I don't know if I'm giving a great answer, but you can also use tools to find tools, right? Nowadays, like we can search through so many venues, right? Like you can ask ChatGPT to give you a structure of how you evaluate different tools. You can hire somebody to help you do that, right? To tell you, okay, this category of tools and this category of tools is certain used in this kind of situations by that size of companies. It will cost you that much, but these are the trade-offs, pros and cons when you compare different tools. Definitely don't use a tool just because somebody else is using it, right? I mean, it's good to get recommendations, but try to match what you're about to pay for and what you're about to integrate in your process with actual criteria that you have. Like, what is your priority? What are you trying to achieve? How many people will use it? What's your budget? These kind of questions. Like, it's really just asking the right questions and looking for the answer, or trying to formulate by yourself an answer that will give you point you in the right direction. And free trials. I mean, these are wonderful. Like, everybody's offering them now. You see now, Businessmap is offering 90 days free trial. I mean, this is how you test a tool. I mean, if you cannot test a tool, don't go for it. Like, it's just seeing in practice. Ask the tool that you're about to use, especially if you're not sure, if you're not experienced in let's say recruitment. Ask the people who are selling you that tool, who are trying to convince you, ask them to help you figure out how to use it for a specific purpose, right? So if you want to use Businessmap for recruitment, ask the nice team of Businessmap to help you onboard it, to help you figure it out, to help you structure it, right? This is something that I think is overlooked. When I use tools, one of the most important things for me is how much support I get from the team behind the tool, right? Because there is no tool that just you press a button and the job gets done, right? It's always a human behind that, and that makes a lot of difference.
Awesome, thank you. I'll jump right next, which is how can find weak links or gaps in their recruitment process?
Sorry, the connection got interrupted a little. Can you repeat the question?
Sorry. How can organizations identify gaps in the recruitment process? And yeah, that bug is really liking you tonight. So we're just gonna embrace that. We're just gonna let him hang out with us. That's
Sorry
cool. He's trying to get hired. So
yeah, probably he's learning, very curious about recruitment. So sorry, can you repeat the question one more time? Yeah. Sorry about that.
How can we identify the weak spots or the gaps in the process of recruitment?
Well, I think we spoke a little bit about it earlier.
A bit, yeah.
First, try to be sure that what you think is a problem, it's actually the problem and it's not just a symptom, right? If you what you observe on the surface is usually not a problem. It's a problem to not have people that you want to hire, right? But it's actually not the problem. It's an outcome of the problem, right? It's a symptom. It's like if there's no people in your pipeline, then ask yourself why there are no people in the pipeline, right? What can be done about it, and are we doing everything about it? But generally, like identifying the gaps is, with or without expertise, is asking the right questions, right? Questions that deep or dig in direction of cause and effect kind of relationship or function, right? You need to ask yourself, like, do we know what we're trying to achieve, right? Like, if we don't have clear idea of like what we're looking for, what is the ideal candidate persona, what means success in recruitment for our company, right? The definitions. Like, I would always, like, here's one thing, like the starting point should always be definitions. If you have a problem, look back into your definitions, because if you have well-written definitions, they will guide you what to do after that. They will guide you how to structure your plan, how to optimize the use of your resources, who is the right person to do it, what are the right channels, do you have enough capacity, do you need to hire like external help or not, do you need to hire more people inside the team, and all of that. So always start with the definitions. Look at your definitions, and if you don't have definitions, well, that's definitely the problem. If you don't have a crystal clear written definition about what is the ideal persona that we're looking for, right? And what are we as a persona, what is our employer persona, right? Who is Businessmap, for example, right? If we imagine Businessmap is a person, I mean, marketing people do that all the time, right? But they do it for products, for customers, for buyers, for, all of that. But these are techniques and these are methodologies that absolutely, with the same success and with the same effect, can be applied in recruitment. As we said earlier, recruitment is sales, but recruitment is also marketing, right? How you express yourself, how you give a reason to someone to consider working for you, to consider joining your team, right? What is the future of that person in your company? If you cannot answer any of these questions, it means that you don't have clear definitions of what you're doing and what you're trying to do. Always start with definition, right? If you think that you have a problem, if you feel that you have a problem, if you're missing your goals, your hiring goals, or your deadlines, or the performance is not good, if you think that you're not hiring the right people, look back and start from the definition. Definitions is the starting point of everything. This is like the source of solutions and problems. Like it's either a solution or it's a problem. It's causing either a solution, or it's either driving a solution or it's causing a problem. So start from the definitions. That's a short answer, I think. And if somebody wants to have an elaborated Q&A session in another time, because we are about to run out of time, we can organize that as well. But I'll let Albena and Veronica to formulate that better.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Boyan.
we'll pass it on to Benny for. Sorry, we'll pass it on to Benny for closing remarks. I just wanted to add in that, like, we at Businessmap are process optimization nerds, so to speak, and recruitment is one process of many different ones. So we love to talk about this stuff. If anyone is interested in seeing how other companies do things, we'd love to chat. We will contact you after this webinar, maybe with the recording. So like super last minute chance for a super quick question right now.
Yeah, we're not rushing that much.
We would love to continue this conversation, show you how process optimization happens, whether it's an HR or whether it's a recruitment or other HR process or any other process for that matter. We'd love to talk about it. I'm gonna shut up now and pass it off to Albena.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Vi. Thank you, Boyan, for sharing your expertise today. Thank you, Veronica, for managing the chat. And of course, a big thank you for all of you who joined us today. We hope this session was insightful. And yes, if you have more questions for Boyan and you're interested in having a follow-up Q&A session, please let us know. You can reach out to us directly. Boyan has shared his LinkedIn. You can connect with him as well. And if you have also questions related to his services or any other details, please, again, do not hesitate to contact us. We'll provide you with the needed details. Keep an eye on your inbox on the recording of the webinar, your gift. And until the next time we see each other, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone, for the attention and participation. I hope that this was useful for everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.